The deep scanner's ping echoed through Kai Thorne's salvage pod, cutting through the endless blue-black of Oceanus Prime's depths. 300 meters down, where the pressure could crush a man's bones to powder, he'd found something big, something that shouldn't be here. Well, well, Kai muttered, adjusting the scanner's range. The debris field stretched across the ocean floor like a graveyard of twisted metal and broken dreams. A cargo hauler by the looks of it, one of those massive freight runners that smuggled everything from weapons to other things. Kai's jaw tightened. He knew what other things meant in this corner of the galaxy. The wreckage was fresh, maybe 6 hours old. Scorch marks along the hull told the story. Trade Empire enforcers had found another smuggling operation. They'd hit hard and fast, leaving nothing but debris and dead dreams sinking into the abyss. His salvage pod's mechanical arms extended, sifting through the wreckage with practiced precision. Kai had been doing this for 3 years now, ever since he'd walked away from his military commission. The ocean depths were honest, at least. They didn't lie about what they contained, didn't dress up brutality in fancy words like security, operations, or pacification missions. A glint of precious metal caught his eye. Kai maneuvered closer, the pod's lights cutting through the murky water. There, a cargo container, partially crushed, but still sealed. The kind of container that held valuable goods, or valuable people. He hesitated, his finger hovering over the cutting torch controls. 3 years of salvage work had taught him not to ask too many questions about what he found down here. The galaxy was full of horrors, and the deep ocean was where most of them ended up. But something made him look closer. Through the container's small viewing port, barely visible in the pod's harsh lights, he saw movement. Not the lazy drift of debris, but something deliberate, desperate. A face pressed against the reinforced glass. Kai's breath caught. Pale blue skin, almost luminescent in the darkness, hair like flowing crimson seaweed, eyes wide with terror and fading hope. The being inside was humanoid, but clearly alien, and clearly alive. Shit, Kai breathed, his military training kicking in. The container was flooding slowly, maybe had another 10 minutes of air left. The being inside, she, somehow he knew it was female, had her palms pressed against the glass, mouth moving in what might have been silent pleas. Kai didn't think. 3 years of carefully maintained emotional distance evaporated in an instant. He engaged the cutting torch, slicing through the container's locking mechanism with surgical precision. Water rushed out in a violent torrent, and for a heart-stopping moment he thought he'd miscalculated, that the sudden pressure change would kill her. But she was still moving, still alive. Barely. Kai extended the pod's rescue tube, a flexible tunnel that could create an air pocket for emergency rescues. He'd never used it to save a person before, only to retrieve particularly valuable salvage. The irony wasn't lost on him. The alien woman tumbled into the rescue chamber, gasping and choking on the recycled air. Up close, she was even more striking, tall and graceful despite her obvious trauma, with features that were hauntingly beautiful in their alienness. Her pale blue skin was marked with scars that looked too precise to be accidental. Shackle marks on her wrists and ankles told a story Kai wished he didn't understand. She pressed herself against the far wall of the rescue chamber, eyes darting between Kai and the controls, clearly expecting this to be another trap, another cruelty in what had probably been a very long chain of them. "Hey," Kai said softly, keeping his voice low and non-threatening. "You're safe now. I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't respond, just stared at him with those impossible eyes, a shade of violet he'd never seen before, deep as the ocean around them and full of intelligence that slavery hadn't been able to break. Kai made a decision that would change everything. Instead of surfacing immediately, instead of calling the authorities or trying to claim salvage rights, he turned his pod toward home. Not the official salvage station where he filed his reports and sold his finds, but the other place. The secret place. The abandoned research station he'd found 2 years ago, hidden in an underwater canyon where the Empire's sensors couldn't reach. The place he'd slowly converted into a refuge, telling himself it was just a backup base, a place to store goods that were too hot to move through official channels. He'd never brought a living being there before. As his pod descended deeper into the canyon's shadows, Kai glanced back at his passenger. She'd curled up in the corner of the rescue chamber, arms wrapped around her knees, red hair floating around her face like a nebula. Even unconscious, she looked ready to run or fight. "What the hell have I gotten myself into?" Kai whispered to the darkness. Behind them, the wreckage of the cargo hauler settled deeper into the ocean floor, taking its secrets with it. But one secret had escaped. One life had been saved. And in the crushing depths of Oceanus Prime, that felt like a victory worth having. Vera woke to the sound of water lapping against metal. For a terrifying moment, she thought she was back in the container, drowning in the endless dark. Then she felt the softness beneath her. Actual fabric, not cold metal. And remembered the human who had pulled her from death. The space around her was unlike anything she'd seen in her years of captivity. Curved walls suggested they were still underwater, but this wasn't a prison. Bioluminescent panels cast gentle blue light across what appeared to be living quarters. Books, actual paper books, sat on shelves alongside salvaged electronics and personal belongings. It felt like a home. "You're awake." The voice was soft, carefully modulated to avoid startling her. The human, Kai, she remembered him saying, emerged from what looked like a small kitchen area, carrying a steaming cup. "How are you feeling?" Vera pressed herself against the wall, old instincts screaming danger. Every kindness in her life had been a prelude to cruelty. Every gentle word had preceded pain. Kai stopped several feet away, setting the cup on a small table. "Tea," he said simply. "It's good for shock, and you've been through hell." She studied him in the soft light. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and eyes the color of deep space. Scars marked his hands and arms. Not the precise marks of torture she bore, but the random violence of war. A soldier then, or former soldier. "I won't hurt you," he said, settling into a chair that kept distance between them. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I need you to know. You're safe here. No one knows about this place." Vera's throat felt raw from the salt water, from screaming underwater where no one could hear. When she tried to speak, only a whisper emerged. "Why? Why what? Why? Save me." The words came out broken, unused. How long since she'd been allowed to speak freely? "I'm just cargo." Something dangerous flashed in Kai's eyes. "No. You're not cargo. You're a person. And what they did to you?" He stopped, jaw clenched. "I've seen too much of it. Done nothing about it too many times. Not this time." Over the following days, Kai proved his words with actions. He brought her food without expecting payment or submission. He tended the cuts on her wrists and ankles with gentle hands that never lingered, never took advantage. When nightmares woke her screaming, he simply called through the door that she was safe, that she could sleep. Slowly, impossibly, Vera began to trust. "What's your name?" Kai asked one evening as they shared a simple meal. "Your real name, not whatever they called you." "Vera," she whispered, the syllables feeling strange after so long. "Vera Theshai of the Crimson Shores." "Beautiful name." "Beautiful place?" A smile touched her lips, the first in years. "Yes. Red coral reefs that sang in the tide. My people. We could hear the songs." Her expression darkened. Before the Empire came. Kai didn't push for details, didn't demand her story like some fascinating artifact to be catalogued. He simply listened when she chose to speak and sat in comfortable silence when she didn't. On the 7th day, as Vera helped him sort through salvaged goods, she brushed against his hand. The contact sent a shock through both of them, not fear but something warmer. Something that made her pulse quicken and her cheeks flush deeper blue. "Vera," Kai said softly, his fingers finding hers. Alarms suddenly blared through the station. Kai's expression went cold and military in an instant. "Stay here," he ordered, moving to a bank of monitors. The screens showed ships above, sleek predators cutting through the water with ruthless efficiency. Bounty hunters, empire, contractors. "They're scanning the canyon," Kai said grimly. "Someone talked, someone knows you're missing from that wreckage." Vera's newfound peace shattered. "They'll never stop looking. I'm too valuable." Then we run. Kai was already moving, gathering essential supplies with practiced efficiency. "I know places they can't follow. Deep places." As they prepared to flee the first real home she'd known in years, Vera felt something she'd thought slavery had killed forever. Hope. Not just for survival, but for something more. Something that warmed her when she looked at this strange, kind human who had chosen her freedom over his own safety. "Kai," she said as they sealed the escape pod, "thank you for seeing me as more than cargo." He turned to her, eyes intense. "You were never cargo, Vera. You're extraordinary, and I'm going to make sure you stay free." The pod launched into the dark waters, leaving safety behind. But as Vera sat beside Kai, watching him navigate toward an uncertain future, she realized she wasn't running from something anymore. She was running toward it. The abandoned mining station clung to the edge of an underwater cliff like a metal parasite, its hull scarred by decades of pressure and neglect. Kai guided their pod through the station's docking bay, the massive doors groaning shut behind them, with a finality that made Vera's newly healed hearts race. "This should buy us time," Kai said, but his voice carried tension she'd learned to recognize. 3 weeks of running together had taught her to read his moods, to see past the calm soldier's facade to the man beneath. They'd been moving from refuge to refuge, staying ahead of the bounty crews that seemed to appear wherever they'd been. Kai's network of hidden bases and forgotten installations had kept them alive, but Vera could see the strain wearing on him. He'd given up everything for her, his life, his livelihood, his safety. "You could leave me," she said quietly as they secured the pod. "Find a remote world, start over, they'd stop hunting you." Kai turned to her, eyes flashing with something fierce. "Never. Don't even think it." The intensity of his response sent heat through her chest. Over the weeks of running, their relationship had deepened beyond simple protector and protected. Shared danger had forged something stronger. Long conversations in cramped hiding spaces, hands brushing as they worked together, eyes meeting across the dim light of temporary shelters. "There's something you need to know," Vera said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "About why they want me so badly, about what I am." Kai stopped working, giving her his full attention. "Tell me." "My people. We weren't just singers of choral songs. We were connected, telepathic. We could share thoughts, emotions, memories across vast distances." She watched his face for revulsion, for fear. The Empire saw us as a threat, a species that could coordinate perfectly, that couldn't be deceived or controlled through lies. "So they killed you," Kai said, voice flat with anger. "Most of us, the survivors, were captured, enslaved. Our abilities were useful for finding hidden rebels, for extracting information, for—" She shuddered. "Other things, but using our gifts breaks us. Each forced connection tears away pieces of who we are." Kai moved closer, his presence warm and solid. "Is that why you couldn't speak at first? The trauma damaged your telepathy?" "Yes. But being with you, feeling safe, it's coming back." She looked up at him, heart hammering. "I can sense your emotions sometimes, the guilt you carry, the war that still haunts you." Instead of pulling away, Kai reached out, his fingers gentle against her cheek. "What else can you sense?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibility. Vera let her newly recovered abilities stretch toward him, reading the complex tapestry of his feelings, protectiveness, admiration, loneliness that matched her own, and underneath it all, growing stronger each day. "You care about me," she whispered. "More than just duty or compassion." "Yes," he said simply. Much more. The admission broke something loose in both of them. Vera rose on her toes, closing. The distance between them and Kai met her halfway. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered. Then Vera's hands found his hair and Kai's arms circled her waist, and gentleness gave way to desperate need. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads touching. "Vera," Kai said, voice rough. The station's proximity alarms screamed to life. "Shit," Kai snarled, spinning toward the control panel. The screen showed multiple contacts approaching fast, sleek hunter ships with military-grade sensors. "How did they find us so quickly?" Vera gasped. Kai's expression went grim as he read the scanner data. "These aren't random bounty hunters. Imperial Navy, someone with serious resources, wants you back." They ran through the station's twisting corridors as the hunters docked, their footsteps echoing off rusted walls. Kai led them deeper into the complex, toward maintenance shafts that might offer escape routes. "There." He pointed to an airlock that connected to the mining facility's underwater extraction tubes. "We can use the old transport system to reach the deep caverns." As they sealed themselves into the narrow tube, Vera pressed against Kai's back, feeling his heart race against her palm. The tube filled with water, and they were swept into the facility's abandoned circulatory system, tumbling through darkness toward an uncertain destination. They emerged in a cavern system that stretched into the planet's deep crust, where bioluminescent creatures provided the only light. As they caught their breath on a rocky ledge, Vera realized something that made her blood run cold. "Kai," she said slowly. "The bounty crews. They always know where we've been, but never where we're going until we're already there." "What are you saying?" "They're not tracking us, they're tracking our movements after we arrive somewhere." She met his eyes, seeing her own realization reflected there. "Someone's been watching, following us from place to place, learning your safe houses," Kai cursed creatively. "Dex, that bastard Marcus on Tethys Station, he's the only one who knew about half these places, which means nowhere is safe anymore." They sat in silence, processing the implications. All of Kai's carefully constructed network of refugees was compromised. They were truly alone now, with only each other and the clothes on their backs. "So what now?" Vera asked, Kai's jaw set with familiar determination. "Now we stop running. We've been reactive this whole time, letting them dictate the terms. Time to change that." "What are you thinking?" "You said there might be other survivors. Of your people out there, slaves in Imperial facilities." He turned to her, eyes bright with dangerous possibility. "What if we found them? What if instead of hiding, we started fighting back?" Vera's pulse quickened. The idea was insane, suicidal. It was also the first time in years she'd felt anything like hope for her people. "It would be incredibly dangerous," she said. "The best things usually are," Kai replied, then leaned down to kiss her again, soft and sure. "Besides, I've got the best motivation in the galaxy to stay alive now." In the depths of an alien ocean, hunted by forces that wanted to drag her back into slavery, Vera had never felt more free. Because freedom, she was learning, wasn't about being safe. It was about choosing who you stood with when safety was impossible. The settlement of Deepfall existed in defiance of every natural law. Built inside a massive underwater cave system, it was home to outcasts, fugitives, and those who'd found the galaxy's surface too hostile for survival. Bioluminescent organisms had been cultivated along the walls, creating a soft, dreamlike glow that made the place feel like something from Vera's oldest memories of home. "Welcome to the end of the world," Kai said as they approached the settlement's docking platform. "If anyone here can help us find your people, it's going to be Naya." Naya turned out to be a former Imperial intelligence officer whose conscience had gotten the better of her. She'd been running an underground network for years, helping escaped slaves and political refugees disappear into the galaxy's forgotten corners. "Vera Theshai," Naya said, studying her with knowing eyes. "I've heard whispers about you, the last of the Crimson Shore telepaths. There's quite a bounty on your head." "We need information," Kai said, "about Imperial slave facilities, specifically ones that might be holding telepathic species." Naya's expression grew serious. That's dangerous knowledge, the kind that gets people killed. People are already dying, Vera said quietly. My people are being used, broken, discarded. I won't hide while that continues. Something in her voice must have convinced Naya, because the woman nodded slowly. Give me 3 days, I'll see what I can find. Those 3 days became the first real peace Vera and Kai had known since their escape. The settlement existed outside time, outside the Empire's immediate reach. For the first time in weeks they could breathe. They were given a small quarters carved into the living rock, with a bed that was actually large enough for 2 people, and a window that looked out into the endless blue. It was there, on their first night of real safety, that the careful boundaries between them finally dissolved. Are you sure? Kai asked, his hands trembling slightly as they traced the curve of her shoulders. I don't want you to feel pressured or... Vera silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her gratitude and growing love into the contact. I'm sure, she whispered against his lips. I want this. I want you. Their lovemaking was gentle at first. Careful, Kai treating her like something precious and fragile. But as Vera's responses grew more eager, more demanding, he began to understand that she needed him to see her strength as much as her vulnerability. I won't break, she gasped, as he mapped the constellation of scars across her blue skin, with his lips. I'm not fragile anymore. No, he agreed, voice rough with want. You're incredible. When Vera's telepathic abilities surged in the height of passion, accidentally connecting their minds, she expected Kai to pull away in fear. Instead, he drew her closer, letting her see his memories of war and loss, the guilt he carried for all the injustices he'd witnessed and failed to stop. You're not responsible for the whole galaxy's pain, she told him, their thoughts intertwining like their bodies. You saved me. That's enough. Through their connection, she felt his love, for her like a warm tide, deep and patient and absolutely sure. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever experienced. On the second day, they explored the settlement together, Vera marveling at the diversity of species and cultures that had found refuge in this hidden place. She saw former slaves who'd built new lives, families who'd fled persecution, artists and scholars whose ideas had been deemed too dangerous for the surface world. It's like a dream, she told Kai as they watched children of a dozen different species playing in one of the communal gardens. All these people, living freely. It's what the galaxy could be, Kai said. If we could stop the empires from crushing everything beautiful. That evening, as they lay in bed watching the lights of deep-sea creatures drift past their window, Vera shared her memories of her homeworld, the singing reefs, the crystal cities, the way her people had lived in harmony with their ocean planet before the Empire came. 18 billion people, she whispered, tears tracking down her cheeks. Gone in a matter of months. My parents, my siblings, my friends, all of them. Kai held her as she grieved, offering comfort without trying to minimize her loss. It was then that she realized she was truly healing, not just from the physical trauma of slavery, but from the deeper wounds of loss and loneliness. On the third day, Naya returned with information that changed everything. There's a facility, she said, spreading hollow charts across her desk. Research Station Sigma-7 in the Corvain Nebula. Officially, it's studying psionic phenomena. Unofficially, it's where the Empire takes telepathic slaves for experimentation. Vera's blood ran cold. How many? Unknown. The station is heavily classified, heavily guarded. Getting in would be nearly impossible. Getting out alive. Naya shook her head. The odds are not good. I have to try, Vera said immediately. If my people are there, suffering, being broken for Imperial research, we have to try, Kai corrected, his hand finding hers. I'm not letting you do this alone. Naya studied them both with calculating eyes. If you're serious about this, I might know someone who can help, but it'll cost you everything. Your safety, your anonymity, Your chance at a quiet life together. Vera looked at Kai, seeing her own determination reflected in his eyes. They'd found love in the depths of despair, built something beautiful in the shadow of an empire that crushed beauty wherever it found it. Now it was time to fight for others to have the same chance. Tell us what you need, Kai said. As Naya began, outlining a plan that was equal parts brilliant and insane, Vera felt a familiar sensation, her telepathic abilities reaching out, searching. For just a moment, she could have sworn she felt something respond from the cold depths of space. Other minds, telepathic minds, crying out in pain and despair. Her people were still out there, still alive, still hoping for rescue, and Vera was going to find them, no matter what it cost. Research Station Sigma-7 hung in the Corvain Nebula like a metal tumor, its angular surfaces reflecting the sickly purple light of the surrounding gas clouds. From their position aboard the stolen cargo vessel, Vera could feel the psychic screams emanating from the station, dozens of telepathic minds in agony, their abilities being torn apart in the name of Imperial science. 63 guards, Kai reported, studying the scanner readings, plus automated defenses, shielded laboratories, and a garrison of Imperial troops on standby. He looked up at her with grim determination. Are you ready for this? Vera nodded, checking her equipment one last time. The past month had been a whirlwind of preparation, gathering allies, acquiring weapons, planning an assault that would either free her people or get them all killed. Naya had called in every favor she was owed, assembling a team of the galaxy's most wanted rebels and outcasts. Remember, Vera said, addressing the dozen volunteers who'd joined their suicide mission. The telepaths inside are broken, traumatized. They may not trust us immediately. Be patient. Be gentle. And if the Imperials try to use them against us? Asked Joran, a massive Keithian warrior who'd lost his own family to Imperial slavers. Then I'll handle it, Vera said simply. Over the weeks of planning, her telepathic abilities had grown stronger, sharpened by purpose and love. She could now reach across vast distances, touch minds light years away. I can break any forced connection they try to establish. Kai squeezed her hand. Stick to the plan. Get in, get your people, get out. Don't try to be a hero. I could say the same to you, she replied, seeing the soldier's resolve in his eyes. She'd learned to read that look. It meant Kai was prepared to sacrifice himself if necessary to ensure her escape. Together or not at all, he said, their old promise. Together or not at all, she agreed. The assault began at Uro 300 station. Time. Kai led the frontal attack, using his military training to coordinate their small force with devastating efficiency. While the station's defenders focused on repelling the pirate raid, Vera slipped through the maintenance systems toward the research levels. The telepathic screams grew stronger as she descended into the station's heart. When she finally reached the laboratory complex, what she found made her stomach turn. Dozens of beings from various telepathic species were suspended in containment tanks, electrodes attached to their skulls, their minds being systematically dissected by Imperial scientists. Barbarians, she whispered, then began the delicate work of freeing her people. The first few telepaths she released were catatonic, their minds so damaged by torture that they barely registered her presence. But others, battered and broken, but still fighting, responded to her touch with desperate hope. Sister, one of them whispered directly into her mind, an elderly Thessahai woman whose red hair had gone white with trauma. We thought we were the last. You're not alone anymore, Vera replied. I'm getting you out of here. The reunion was interrupted by blaster fire echoing through the corridors. The team's assault was meeting heavier resistance than expected. Through her connection with Kai, Vera felt his concern, his growing desperation as Imperial reinforcements arrived. Can you walk? She asked the freed telepaths. Can you fight? The elderly woman's eyes hardened with familiar determination. We can do better than that, child. We can sing. Vera's heart raced as she understood. The psychic harmonics that had made her people so dangerous to the Empire, their ability to coordinate perfectly across vast distances, to share strength and knowledge instantaneously. Alone, each of them was broken. But together, link with me, she broadcasted to every telepathic mind in the facility. Let me show you the way home. The psychic choir that formed in the next instant was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. 37 minds from a dozen different species, all focused on a single purpose, freedom. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every Imperial soldier on the station suddenly found their thoughts clouded, their communications jammed by psychic interference. Automated systems began malfunctioning as telepathic energy overloaded their circuits. But the effort came at a cost. Vera felt the strain of coordinating so many damaged minds, the psychic feedback threatening to tear her consciousness apart. She held on, drawing strength from her love for Kai, from her determination to see her people free. But as they fought their way through the station's corridors, she knew she was burning herself out. Each use of her abilities pushed her closer to the edge. The final confrontation came in the station's command center, where the facility's director, a cold-eyed human named Dr. Voss, waited with a squad of elite guards and a horrifying trump card. A young Thessi boy, no more than 12, with control collars wrapped around his head and neck. Surrender, Voss commanded, or I'll fry the child's brain. Vera felt Kai's rage through their connection, saw him calculating angles for a shot that might save the boy. But she had a better idea. Instead of fighting the collar's control, she embraced it. When Voss activated the device intending to use the boy's abilities against them, Vera was ready. She followed the psychic connection back to its source, using the torturer's own equipment to establish a link with his mind. Dr. Voss had spent years studying telepathic species, learning their weaknesses, perfecting methods of breaking their will. But he'd never had a telepath inside his head, experiencing firsthand every cruelty he'd inflicted, every life he'd destroyed in the name of science. The feedback loop lasted only seconds. When it ended, Voss was catatonic and the control collars had been reduced to slag. But the effort had cost Vera everything. As Kai caught her collapsing form, she felt her consciousness fragmenting, her abilities burning out like an overloaded circuit. "No," Kai whispered, cradling her against his chest. "No, don't you dare. We're supposed to do this together." "The others," she gasped, her voice barely audible. "Get them to safety." "I'm not leaving you." Vera smiled, using the last of her strength to touch his mind one final time, sharing her love, her gratitude, her absolute faith in his ability to protect their people. Then darkness claimed her. 1 year later, Vera woke to the sound of water lapping against coral, the familiar music of the tides that had haunted her dreams since childhood. For a moment, she thought she was back on Thessi, that everything since the Empire's arrival had been a nightmare. Then she felt the arms around her, strong, familiar, beloved, and remembered. "Welcome back," Kai whispered against her hair. "You've been asleep for 3 days." They were on New Thessi, a world the freed telepaths had claimed in the outer rim, far from Imperial space. It wasn't home, that was gone forever, but it was a beginning. A place where the survivors could heal, where they could build something new from the ashes of the old. "The others?" Vera asked. "Safe. Free. Building. Houses, planting gardens, teaching their children the old songs." Kai helped her sit up, and she could see the settlement through their bedroom window, a small city rising from crystal beaches, filled with the voices of survivors who refused to let their cultures die. "And us?" Kai's smile was soft and sure. "We're exactly where we're supposed to be. Together." As the twin suns set over New Thessi's purple oceans, Vera let herself believe it. They'd fought the Empire and won. They'd saved lives, built a future, found love in the depths of despair. It was more than enough. It was everything. And in the years that followed, as their legend spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring other Slaves to seek freedom and other worlds to resist imperial tyranny, the story would always begin the same way. Once, a woman sank with the cargo, but one human refused to let her die. And from that single act of kindness, a revolution was born.